Today, I've invited a few special guests that are going to help us better navigate the complex recruitment technology ecosystem. And I'd like to introduce them now. Brian, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
So Brian Donne is co-founder and president of Talent Tech Labs. And the reason we're excited to partner with Talent Tech Labs is they are really on a mission to elevate the state of recruitment through technology. So through the research that they do with their customers and their teams, they can identify emerging technologies and help agencies spot the solutions that will add the most value for their business. So thanks for joining us again, Brian.
Great.
And Lauren Jones is Vice President of Talent Technology at Volt Workforce Solutions. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I have to tell a quick story about you. When I talked to my team about who is the first customer I should talk to if we're going to host a panel on technology, and the unresounding response was Lauren Jones. So not to put you on the spot, but the team speaks highly of your experience and the work that you've been doing. So we're thrilled to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I want to just jump right in. The fact of the matter is the technology ecosystem in our industry is complex. It's changing rapidly. Innovation is accelerating. And I'm curious, Brian, from the research that you guys have done, what does the state of recruitment technology look like today?
Well, it's a great question. And in a word, it's going at a tremendous pace. There's been an absolute deluge of new technology coming to market over the past 5 or 7 years. Recruiting has a lot of dysfunctional processes throughout it. And so it's not surprising that innovators are trying to come up with ways to make things work better, more seamlessly, better candidate experiences, better recruiter experiences, and so forth. And there's been a whole dearth of money willing to support startups. And so you have a very robust economy and ecosystem where founders can raise money and quickly stand up a company with a solution. So that's added up to a tremendous outpouring of new tech coming to market, almost to the point where it's overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And many of the executives that we speak to feel like a deer in the headlights. There's just too much out there to even start to assess what we can use to do our jobs better. And so we think it's really important that it's an exciting time to be in the space, but it's also a time where opportunity abounds, but persistence around what you're trying to solve for is really a very important criteria that you need to go into this with in mind. And so well-informed and forward-thinking leaders tend to think about what problem am I trying to solve with technology before jumping in and just jumping onto the shiny object that appears on the horizon, of which there are many. And some of the frustration you referred to earlier is some of that reactionary behavior. People that approach it a little more diligently, trying to solve a specific issue in their workflow or their process, probably have a better chance of a good outcome. And it isn't so daunting if you're able to employ your thinking in that way.
Thank you. So Brian mentioned the fact that you have to start with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. And I know you guys have a very deliberate approach to how you look at technology at Volt.
We do.
So can you please share a little bit about how you guys think about your strategy?
Yeah, I think there's a balance that, it's kind of a tightrope, right? This is a human industry. And so I think we need to focus on technologies that are connecting human to human faster, right? And ensuring that you do have a business process to leverage, ensuring that you do have a pilot group, that you do have some flexibility to try some new technologies. And I think any agency that's making headway and connecting human to human faster is taking some risks and trying out new products. That's the fun part of it. But you do have to have a very, very deliberate, controlled process, I think, in order to see what it can contribute to the organization, and that's later down our topic, we get to go and we get to look at data but it starts with the end in mind. And if you can, what business process are you trying to solve for, as you said, that gives you an executable strategy to be able to embrace new technology, keep experiential choices, because as David referenced, right, you're talking to many different generations and we have to be cognizant of that. We also, again, have to walk that fine line of ensuring that we maintain a human experience. And that for us is primary. The user experience will help you capture the right audience, regardless of generation.
So one of the things that we outline in the research and that we understand from talking with customers is that the expectations are evolving across the board, whether it's recruiters, whether it's candidates, whether it's clients you're working with. So I'm curious how you guys think about managing the expectations of those different stakeholder groups as you're evaluating different technology solutions or other instruments you might implement in your organization.
I think you have to let each end user have a seat at the table. You need to buy based on the front line, right?
Yep.
If you are buying based on what your perception of the need is, you are going to miss the mark as far as having the technology adopted and adapted to, right? And so, again, starting with the end in mind, what business process are you trying to solve for, and getting the right key players in the conversation will help you put the right solution out there. Because if those voices aren't, as a matter of fact, just this morning, we put out a very, very large end user survey for one of our technologies to really just elicit from every vantage point, what is your experience? Because everybody's interpretation of the technology and everybody's user case is going to be different. And we need to make sure that we're adapting to that.
Wonderful. Somebody once told me this analogy, and I don't know how applicable it is, but they said sort of get their fingerprints on the gun.
Yeah.
Right? Think about how they are a part of the decisioning because it's ultimately going to impact their day-to-day, and then use that input as a way to sort of roll it out such that they feel vested in the solution and you can drive towards the outcomes that you were driving for in the first place. So
that's where you get your evangelists, right? Yeah. That the people that helped contribute to the end solution are going to be the ones that help you evangelize, adapt, and adopt new technologies.
So this is something that I'd love to hear from you on, Brian. We know in many instances that technology can create this huge opportunity, but we also know, of course, that there's so many different solutions. And even if you're able to find the right one, to your point, and you start with the end in mind, many of them fall flat because of either challenges with implementation, integration, or adoption. So I'm curious, based on the agencies that you have worked with, how can we increase our chance of success when implementing or integrating or driving these new solutions throughout our organizations?
Well, the ecosystem of solutions now in the recruiting space is really robust. We track over 1,700 or 1,800 companies that have solutions. And there's a lot of innovation, but many of them are actually point solutions that solve a discrete challenge. And so in your quest to try and improve process or improve your candidate experience or to engage better, you're likely to want to deploy one of these best-of-breed solutions. However, to work efficiently, you can't just keep piling point solution on top of point solution and have all these new icons on the desktop. Unfortunately, in such a case, many of them will probably end up being relegated to vaporware that won't be utilized and never return like they were supposed to in terms of the investment that was made in them. Most critically, you need to think about these point solutions and how well they will fit into your current workflow or your aspirational workflow, and how well they will integrate their data outputs into your primary systems. In staffing, that's primarily an applicant tracking system, possibly a CRM, a candidate relationship management tool. But if the data does not flow from system to system, they will become difficult to adopt because recruiters and salespeople in the business are very transaction oriented. They don't have time to waste opening different screens, going back and forth, porting data over possibly manually, and you're really setting yourself up for failure. So absent a really good integration strategy, we would counsel against chasing point solutions just for the sake of it. You have to look at the holistic performance of your systems, and for those to work really optimally, point solutions can work if they're integrated in so that data flows seamlessly with process or with the way the data would flow, so that you can make informed decisions and see how those tools are impacting your performance.
This is something that we hear a lot of, both inside and outside the walls of LinkedIn, is how can we create a workflow that leverages the brilliance of innovation, but doesn't erode productivity, of course, for recruiters along the way. So, Lauren, talk to me a little bit about how system integration plays a role at Volt, and maybe any sort of pragmatic tips you may have for agencies to develop a modern integrated tech stack within their organization.
Sure. Well, we have a saying with our IT teams, there is no transformation without integration. And so we try diligently to stay in our lane and ensure that we're buying technologies that are integratable, right? And that we can take and leverage what the end desired result is and adapt it really quickly. And I've talked about language being really, really important. Consistency in language when you're going to adopt a new product can help something new look familiar. And again, that helps your recruiters or salespeople or whomever you're trying to solve for adopt it a little bit more seamlessly. And if you're a bullhorn shop, stay in the marketplace. If you're force.com, stay in your lane is what I try and focus on, because you're right. There is so much ancillary technology out there that without it being plugged in renders it ineffective. And so you did just buy a fancy bauble, essentially, without being able to realize what you were trying to solve for in the first place. So integration, I think, is fundamental to realizing any sort of advancement or enhancement within your organization.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of technical capability, of course, that goes into that. But there's something you mentioned earlier, which is much more along the human side of a transformation or any technology that you'll implement. And I'm curious how you guys sort of balance culture and innovation at Volt.
Well, you make innovation part of your culture.
I like that.
Right? We want everybody to be a part of that solution. And that means we need eyes and ears out there, seeing everything, being aware. We have a mailbox where all suggestions can come in for new technologies. We want to hear about it. We want to hear what you're hearing. And again, that makes your field a part of the solution, which for adoption and embracing new change makes it a little bit easier on those that are implementing.
So let's assume that we got the integration piece right and we know where we sort of want to go. You mentioned adoption. Mm-hmm. And Brian, I'm curious to get your perspective. Adoption is challenging because change is challenging. So based on the work that you do with agencies, and I think you guys are in a really fortunate position because you get to see organizations of all different kind of maturity levels. Are there any examples of those that are driving adoption in a way that really works so that change doesn't feel so hard on their recruiters or their teams as they implement these new tools?
Well, yes, that's absolutely the case. We actually ran a survey for CIOs of the American Staffing Association member companies. And one of the amazing findings of impediments that they cited to innovation coming into their organization was people are very content with the way things are now. Ergo, change is difficult. Rather keep it. If it's not broken, don't try to fix it. Truth is, it is not optimal anymore to recruit and deliver the way that it had been in the past. And so you do need to sort of move the organizational behavior into a place where they're more open and willing to embrace adoption of technology. And failing to gain that adoption is really a miss, because you can make the best selection, you can implement it seamlessly and perfectly, but at the end of the day, if your users don't log in and use the system the way it's intended, it'll be a missed opportunity. And so having the end in mind, I think we mentioned a little earlier, is a crucial step. And so when you're selecting a vendor, you might want to look at how well they are known for supporting customer success. Because for an organization to be able to adopt the technology across the organization, you need to have pretty robust rollout plans, a strategy to move people along. You find your acolytes who are going to go out and evangelize and lead the way, but you also have your detractors and people that are going to be really laggards. And you have to organize yourself in a way that you can move people in the same direction, get them where you need them to be, and at the end of the day have the technologies adopted and people feeling like it became into their life without them having to really go out of their way to accomplish it. And so by choosing vendors who have really good reputation for customer success, they come with the tools and the mindset to help as they're doing their configuration or installation to make sure that the right people are getting involved, that there's the right amount of communication along the way, and that adoption is not a hurdle that you think of at the end of the game, but you actually have it in mind as you're making your selection of your partner.
Very thoughtful. And do you find that challenging for some of the smaller technology solutions that are maybe just getting started, and while they might have a great idea or piece of software, they may not have a robust infrastructure for supporting a rollout or training and development? Or do you see it varies by size and type of solution across the board?
You're very perceptive. In the early days, people, as I said earlier, it was easy to set up a company. And so you had a bright idea, you could code it, you can get it out there. And a lot of people were trying to build self-serve models. Hey, just go online, swipe a credit card, own this app, recruit better. And the truth was that unless you moved people along from an understanding and awareness and behavioral aspect, you probably have vaporware on your hands. And so many of these startups really did a poor job of specifying or understanding the complexity of customer success. And so our advice in those days around to those founders was, hey, great tech, but you really need to be thinking about this in a way that it could be consumed. And that means you've got to bulk up your customer success function. You got to spend a longer time and more money on hand-holding throughout an application, which you'd like to think is purely a digital solution. But in fact, many of these we've seen come back a second time, a third time, with increasing service layers included. Right. And that really attests to the fact that you can't just have a freestanding app in many cases that you just step up to and like you do with a consumer app, order a meal or order a driver. Some of these require a bit more service delivery. And so being mindful of that at the beginning is very helpful. And founders that set up that kind of organization are the ones that we see scaling and seeing success.
And you're 100% right. We're not because technology is moving so quickly, we can't create the content for training as well, right? You know, we're adapting and changing and implementing and doing all of this. We're going to leverage our vendors and leverage our vendors hard to provide the supporting content so that it can be adopted appropriately. And I think if that expectation isn't there, that puts a lot of responsibility on you to essentially create content on a product you didn't develop.
I think it's sage advice, and I think you really need to push your vendors, and I'm certain that you've done this.
Yes.
But you really have to lean into them and let them know where you potentially see blind spots, gaps in your organization, where you need them to step up and support. Because I think at the end of the day, many of them have the same goal you have, is to ensure that you have a successful outcome based on whatever solution you're purchasing. Because for them, you're going to renew. Of course, for you, you're going to be able to drive towards the business goals that you sort of had. And I think I would definitely recommend for leaders within any size type of agency, lean on those partners, try and push them to the boundaries to make sure that you're most set up for success, because that's what creates a win-win.
Right. And name familiarity, if it's a new vendor coming in, we spend almost an entire month familiarizing the field with the name, the history, you know, all of the sort of rich sales content. We almost do like an internal sales campaign because that familiarity takes away a little bit of that fear of the impending change. So if that's a great tip for gaining adoption. Again, getting familiar, if it is a new language, getting them familiar with it, getting them talking about it, getting them understanding the why, which is a really, really important question to answer for a field that says, you know, why change?
Brilliant. So we can't have a technology conversation without talking about data and insights. So in a moment, I want to get your feedback on the metrics that matter, on the data you're going after, the insights that are powering your business. But I first want to take a moment and introduce a video that we shot recently at our Talent Connect conference. So Adam Hawkins, who is our search and staffing director in EMEA, had the chance to catch up with Maggie Wu, who's the regional head of marketing for S3, a global staffing agency that predominantly works in the STEM sector. And they had a conversation around how growth is happening at S3 and how data-driven strategy is going to take their business to new heights. So let's take a look at that video.
You're new in your role as head of marketing in this region. Could you talk to me a bit about what you've probably done your first 100 days. What's your strategy now to drive growth and engagement for S3 in not just the market you operate in, but also the global market?
Absolutely. So this is something that I'm bringing to S3. The same concept as what I've done at Groupon and Walmart as well, growth hacking. Because for this industry, the STEM industry, the industry is growing, and we are growing faster than the industry. How can we leverage tools and data providing from, for example, LinkedIn, to equip our consultants to do a better job? Because for consultants, every day they're interacting with lots of candidates, lots of clients. We want to be very strategic and very targeted, and in terms of dollar spend and also their time spent as well. This is exactly what my team and myself will be focusing on the next few years, to bring all data points together, build a data platform that can help the consultants understand where to focus, where to spend most of their time in order to generating better placement, high quality placements.
So I want to talk about tech, one being sort of the short term. What's the one idea, initiative, or product that you see in 2020 that you think is going to be game changing, or you're just simply really excited about, that is going to help you be more successful?
Well, what I'm excited about is to pulling the idea of data-driven and machine learning to the industry of staffing, and to help our consultants sitting in the core of it. Because eventually, as all industry are progressing towards that direction, including staffing industry, it's the same thing. Let's leverage data, let's leverage AI, machine learning, to help us to have better, more productive, everyday work. And that's exactly what my team and the rest of the leadership is trying to do. So on top of that, we continue to go back to the basic of branding, because again, as I mentioned, we have so many great stories we want to share with the industry. We want to share with the candidate community, letting them know that we are very proud of working with them, of delivering meaningful work to the industry.
Great. Mm-hmm. So sounds like we're very much in the algorithmic phase around innovation. So moving forward, you come in with a fresh perspective to the industry. I'm an old guard in there, 20 years.
You look young.
Where do you think, what do you see as like the future of recruitment and staffing, just in general, and where do you think recruitment and staffing businesses have to evolve to not just survive, but to play a massive impact in society and talent moving forward?
Absolutely. And I see staffing industry not only will survive in this age of data-driven industry, but also as a core business partner with clients, equal partner to provide data insights, industry insights. A lot of consultants right now, what we're trying to help them to realize is they will have more time to do the human touch with the clients, with the candidates, to understand their true needs, what we can do to help them to reach the next career goal, to reach the next promotion. This is essentially what the technology is helping us to do, to free up time for our consultants to truly deliver meaningful human touch with their candidates.
What do you think is going to be your number one or your top couple of challenges that are potentially going to be blockers to your success?
Hopefully we can
don't say recruiters.
Yeah, of course, different systems, how to manage them onto one platform or connect them together. This is one challenge that right now we're working on. And I know LinkedIn team is working on as well, how to plug into different CRM system. This is one. Second is the data, how to clean the data and making sure the data is truly meaningful. Because a lot of times I don't want my team to be buried into data. It would be too much. Essentially, we would lose the focus. So what we want to do is to have the cleanness of the data and understand which are the key ones that we need to focus on, must have, which are the ones nice have. So in a way that we know systematically how to approach and building the data warehouse.
So let's look forward. I'm interested to know, do you see the recruitment or the staffing industry at a higher pace than what you're used to? And if so, what would you say your major priorities that you're going to put in place to work in quite a fast-moving recruitment and talent market?
Yeah, I have to say, it's a pleasant surprise. The company has been moving really fast because of the industries that we're in, STEM industry. Right now, demand, supply, and it's wonderful that we need to move fast to help those companies to fulfill their needs. At the same time, for my team, looking forward, what we are trying to do is to make sure that we are able to be at the forefront of the company, to build a brand story, to make us to be an industry authority and also stand out as well. Because a lot of times it is truly the brand that the clients and also candidates they want to stay with. And this is exactly what our consultants right now have been delivering. And we want to make sure to tell this story to everyone.
Special thank you to Adam and Maggie for joining us at Talent Connect. The work that they are doing at S3 is really transformational. And Lauren, I want to talk about something that Maggie mentioned specifically. They are a data-rich organization, as is Volt.
Yes.
How do you guys think about managing and prioritizing all the information at your fingertips so that you're pointed on the things that matter most?
Yeah, we need to derive something that's actionable from the data, right? So I think you need to keep it simple. It absolutely needs to be visible. And there needs to be clarity on what it's contributing to the betterment of the organization, right? And I think if you kind of go with those three key things, data becomes a little bit less complex. The whole start with the end in mind. What are you trying to derive from the data? For us, we were trying to spend more intelligently. Right, so we now know by week, by month, by year to date exactly which vendors are bringing in what revenue. We tie it to a revenue number so that we are right side with our investments in our vendors. Because when we create a partnership, we are investing in you, and we have to make sure that there's ROI there. And so I think for the field, that simplicity and the clarity and expectation, helping them understand what this data is going to help them achieve, you have to have adoption behind data as well. And if you're not starting with the why we're looking at this and what it's going to do for them, the what's in it for me. If you're not clarifying that and ensuring that there's a really good understanding of why we look at what we look at, then it's just numbers on a page. And so, again, visibility, simplicity, and what that data is contributing to the betterment of the organization are three things that we focus on when we're creating new reports, looking for additional data, out there seeking some sort of piece of information, because there's a plethora of it.
Well, I think you guys are really mature in terms of where your organization's at. And I certainly know at LinkedIn, we are laser focused on what does value mean for our customers individually, and what are we doing to increase that value. But it's harder for organizations that maybe are not at the scale that you're at or the level of maturity that you are with your infrastructure. So Brian, I'd love to hear from you based on an assessment of the broader market. Where do you think agencies are at when it comes to this sort of attribution challenge? And what can they do to continue to get smarter about getting the right information to make the right decisions quickly for their business?
Well, it's a great question, and it is a great source of frustration. And again, in a survey that we did with agencies, tremendous amount of frustration with a lack of visibility into where their job spend was coming from or going to, and what it was driving in the business. It's very complicated, and with digital technologies that we now have in hand, they spew out lots and lots of data. But the data on its own is not necessarily that informative. In fact, it can be overwhelming and confusing. And so what we've seen recently in the past year and a half is a large upswelling of people bringing to market analytics solutions. In fact, we coined the term analytics as a service because in some cases, just having a service bureau that generates the kind of reports and visibility you need might be the best way to deliver that insight. But the amount of data that you have at your disposal is overwhelming, but it's not always indicative or clear. It could be, on its surface looking like a gray set of findings, nothing pointing you definitively right or left. And so these analytics platforms tend to extract data from their native systems, and what they do is actually put it into a presentation layer where management can see in a dashboard kind of view how the various systems are performing. And so they'll know that are my reps on the calls on their voice over IP system for 3 minutes or 30 seconds. That's very indicative of the kind of call that it is. seeing the submit ratios based on a particular sourcing strategy that ran for one particular week. And so when you're able to see the data from different systems across your tech stack displayed in an array where you can make correlations almost in line of sight, it's really informative. And then you're starting to take that data, put those insights into a place where you can make it actionable and make sure that they're driving towards the business criteria that you had in mind when you adopted these tools to start with.
Thank you. I think this data conversation could be an entire episode, and I'd love to sort of continue it, but there's a lot of questions that are coming through from the feed that I want to get to. I think we can all say with confidence that agencies need to embrace a data-driven mindset and think about how they're not only garnering that information, but how they're using it to power their organization, make decisions about talent pools they go after, advise their clients to be smarter about their hiring strategy, and of course being more informed in the business decisions that they make. So I think I would definitely posit that to the group. But I want to get to some of the questions that are coming on from the feed. I think we have the opportunity to discuss maybe 2 or 3 of them. So I'm going to go to one that is near and dear for you, Lauren. So the question is around how to balance the human aspect of our business with technology. So specifically, some technological aspects overlook the human element. So how do you cope with designing a process that embraces innovation but ensures you have the human touch that agencies require?
Yeah, I think you as an organization have to know who you are, right? And what experience you want to perpetuate. What user experience do you want that person to have? Have you yourself gone through that experience? And I think it's an interesting question because there's no real right way for me to hand over the answer. I think it's going to be different for every organization based on their culture and what they want their brand to represent. For us, leveraging technology that connects people faster and providing experiential choices. As David said, we don't care which generation you are. We just want you to come here, right? Yeah. And so we're going to provide a way, whatever experience you're most comfortable with, whether it's chat now, text now, work now. That's the experience we want to provide. I think the answer's not going to be the same for everybody.
Yep. So parting thought from you, Brian, and we got to wrap pretty quickly here. There's a question that came through about how do you manage the face-to-face interaction, the people communication, and the soft skills among this technology and data conversation?
Wow. That's not a place to end this. That's a whole new conversation to start. We have a quick phrase we throw out: you can't take the human out of human resources, right? Yeah. And so what we like to think of as technology stepping up to do are the tasks that machines can reliably automate and make easier, and let the human factors that recruiters and salespeople like to do, engage with people, have conversations, bring value. They can have more time to do that. And so if you have your technology positioned in a way where it's taking over the routine and mundane and enabling you with new insights that are actionable, then the people elements can actually go about being people and keep the whole process human and have a high touch feel to it.
Love it. You can't take the human out of human resources. Right. Listen, I am very grateful for you guys joining. You are so bright and understand this topic so well. I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you.
I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Please feel free to connect with myself and Lauren and Brian.